Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Let's Talk. Probably the only episode, probably, in which we get a guest in and interview them about webcomics. And surprisingly enough, and we've actually gotten ourselves a guest to interview, one of the actual artists for a comic that we were reading. And Gabe Swarr, one of the founding members of Dumm Comics. I figured we'd bring him in for our special month of Dummcember. Say hello.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Gabe Swarr is known for quite a few things. He's a cartoonist, been working in the industry since I think it was like early 2000s. I know that. Fuck, I should have looked at the website.
I started in 97.
Jesus Christ, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the first cartoon that you worked on?
First cartoon I worked on was for Bumco. We did the Yogi Bear cartoons. No,
Wow.
the Ranger Smith cartoons for Cartoon Network. That was the first thing I ever worked on. Yeah.
Jeez. And
it wasn't released till years later, but I started on that.
Wow, really? Jeez. And now it's kind of roped around back and going in and working on Animaniacs. Wait,
Yep.
it's kind of surprising. There's a lot of animators that I've seen popping up and contributing to it. It's kind of a big project.
Yeah, it's a super high budget show, so we have a giant crew on the show.
Yeah. Sadly, that's not what we're going to be talking about today. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the more niche adventures that you've taken, which is, of course, webcomics. So, I got into Dumm Comics around 2011 or 2010. Specifically, right when Earthward Ho ended, and I've been enthralled ever since, kind of watching the whole thing, all of it go down, and what literally wasn't until like last year, and I was like, all right, I want to make this Let's Read series, and we're gonna talk about and we're gonna showcase all of these webcomics. I took a look at Dumm Comics, and I'm like, I want to look at the artists and see more, dive a bit more into it. I realized, holy shit, you guys are all art animators. What the hell? like, like I don't know if I'm just naive, but like I always saw webcomics as an independent kind of just internet artist sort of avenue that was for independently showcase your own art and make your own things. I never thought that all of these artists or these animators would end up doing web comics. What kind of led to that? What made you decide to venture into that sort of medium?
Well, it goes back a little further because when I was when I was in school, I went to the Joe Kubert School of Cartoon and Graphic Art. It's the one in New Jersey. It's for comics. I grew up in Pennsylvania, went to school in New Jersey, and then when I moved out here, in high school, I was making like little ashcan comics and like on the Xerox machine and everything.
Oh yeah.
And then when I started working in animation, I self-published the first Big Pants Mouse comic. That was 2001, and then the second one came out the following year.
Mhm.
And it was under the Dumm Comics moniker then. Like I just when I was in high school, my friend and I wanted to do a comic together, and we were trying to come up with a name, and he's like, "Oh, just call it Dumb, but spell it wrong." I'm like, "Oh, that's funny." So that's where the name came from, and then I was working in the animation industry for a long time, and made a lot of friends. And in animation, there's not many people that do a lot of work outside of their day job. Like a lot of people just only do like their work. Like if you're a director, you just direct and you go home and you just relax because it's a lot of work, you know.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, on the East Coast, that I from what I've the, when I was coming up, the East Coast animation industry was really different than the West Coast animation industry. On the East Coast, like it's a lot of like smaller houses. So if you work in animation, you can work on like a lot of different aspects of animation. Like you can do storyboards, and then you can jump into animation, and then you can do like work on a commercial for a while, and you just like move around more, and you learn a lot of stuff. And so a lot of people are like just more independent artists and that kind of stuff. And being from the East Coast, when I came out here, I was surprised to see that a lot of people weren't doing that kind of thing. So I'd be working on my own projects after hours. I'd be making pitches or doing comics, and I wanted to like help my fellow artists do the same thing because a lot of them were dabbling in comics or putting pitches together or doing storyboards, and they're really funny, a lot of funny people in animation, but they don't work on their own thing. They just don't like throw something together,
No, yeah.
Yeah, so we were working on. I was working on El Tigre, the Adventures of Manny Rivera for Nickelodeon, and I started seeing like all these great web comics popping up. I mean, I saw them back earlier than that, but even some shorts and stuff I liked, like Grickle and like really early stuff. I'm trying to think of like the very first stuff I saw, but I was like, why aren't we doing this? Like, I should get a bunch of friends together, and we should do one like every, like, one person does a comic a week, and if there's 5 people, then that's 5 comics a week,
Yeah.
So that was where the idea came from, and then it was just literally walking across the hall to talk to Katie, and then going across the hall from there to talk to Fred, and Ricky was a storyboard artist on El Tigre, and Sean recently he was also a storyboard artist too. So
Yeah.
it was just like basically we met up and we're like let's do this, let's do this, let's just have fun, and that's what we did. Like we got like I don't know, like a couple months ahead and then launched, and that's where Dumb came from.
And then the rest was history. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, that kind of yeah, that kind of that kind of bled into my second question because I decided to look at all the artists. I'm like, what how the hell how did these come together? And I did notice like pretty much everyone, well, most of the people that are the artists that worked on it were from El Tigre. So it
Mhm.
was a pretty close knit group, I think.
Yeah, we were all really good friends because a lot of us worked together on a show before that called The Buzz on Maggie, which was a
Yeah,
Disney show.
yeah,
And
I
then,
kind of remember that one.
yeah, and then even before that, like some of us worked on a cartoon called Mucha Lucha. So, yeah, like, and plus I knew Ricky like for forever. Like when I first moved out in 96, that's when I met him, and we were friends since then, so.
Yeah. It's kind of surprising though. Like, um, one thing that I haven't mentioned in the reads is you. So you mentioned Sean. I believe that's Sean Cecil.
Zealous, Sean
Okay.
Zealous.
Okay. Thank
Yep.
you. It was kind of weird to read.
It's a weird, it's a weird spelling.
Yeah. Yeah. Who, for those of you who may not remember the name, he ended up becoming the creator for Regular Show, and now, frick, what was it called? Almost There, Good Enough,
Close enough.
Close Enough. There,
Yeah, he didn't create that show. Like what happened is that he was on Dumb Comics and working on El Tigre, and
mhm.
he was doing his comic, and then Flapjack started, and
Yeah.
he left for Flapjack because of his comic. Like they saw what was his comic?
That was
Um,
Through the Porthole.
yeah, Through the Porthole. They saw it was like a nautical theme type of comic, so they said, "Oh, let's just get him for Flapjack." So he left for Flapjack, and then that's how he met JG, the creator of Regular Show. And so
Ah,
he started really early on the show, but he's not the creator. JG Quintal is the creator.
I see. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, but he's like he's great though. Like Sean's, he's I think he's no, I don't think he's still at Cartoon Network. I think he's somewhere else now. maybe Netflix or something.
According to IMDb, he is still working on Close Enough, which I think that's Amazon or one of the streaming
Close enough is
services.
Cartoon Network.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. They made it a Cartoon Network, and then it streams on HBO Max.
Ah, that's where the ads are telling me. Yeah, but also other thing that I found, which I don't know if it was directly tied to Dumb, but it was in the Hall of Dumb, was Three Bear Bears, which ended up becoming
Yep.
We Bear Bears, and then I think what also kind of scratched the itch and made me curious was the fact that Harpy G ended up getting the pilot, and that was kind of big news.
Yeah, definitely. We Bear Bears. We would do this thing where we had guest comics, like just as filler on the weekend to kind of fill out the week.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
was working on the Kung Fu Panda pilot at Nickelodeon, and I was working with Daniel Chong, who was he was working at Pixar at the time, and he was living in San Francisco, and he would come down like a couple weekends or whatever. And I said, "Hey man, I have this guest spot. Do you want to do a comic?" He's like, "Oh yeah." So he just threw together that We Bear Bears thing. He just, that's just his type of humor,
Yeah.
and it just exploded.
Well, I mean, it's very interesting because, like, I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of a lot of the modern cartoons out now, but I really do like Re Bear Bears. It very much feels like a comic turned into an animated show, which actually does have its place, and I'm glad to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's such a funny guy, and I'm glad that got made. I mean, he was working on another pilot at Nickelodeon before that, and it just wasn't working out well, and it
Oh.
just wasn't good timing. And then I remember he left, and he just threw it again. He just like kind of just, I can't say he just threw it together, but he was done with the development at Nickelodeon. He didn't even know if he wanted to go back into development or pitch We Bear Bears, but he decided to, and then they loved it.
Hey, sometimes it just works out that way. Right
Yeah.
man, the wrong man in the right place to make all the difference, as they say.
Yep.
So I do want to mention so you've actually had two different comics that have been in Dumb. You had, of course, Big Pants Mouse, which we've mentioned, but also
Mhm.
you kind of came back and ended up doing Life in the Analog Age, which was a really big one.
Yes, definitely. What? Excuse me.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there's supposed to be a question. I don't know. So how or why did you end up stopping Big Pants Mouse, and what led you to come back with a new one? A lot of times, a lot of artists end up kind of having one big project that they kind of make their lifetime or their big one, and then it takes them a while to kind of come up with a new one or even think about that. What made you
Well,
want to move to Life in the Analog Age?
I was doing Big Pants for so long. Like I said, I started in like '01, doing comics, and I had a bunch of stuff written for Big Pants, and I was like, and I wanted to do something that was a little more less like jokey and more heartfelt.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if that was like if Dumb was the right uh, audience for it. But and I was even gonna like just spin it off into its own like
See,
like
website and do
site,
your own
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
website anyway. And it was like I was talking to everyone about it, and I was like, and they're like, you should do it with Dumb, and I was like, oh, I'll try, see what they think. And everyone responded really well, to it. And that came about by like my wife and I would go for like walks at night, and she'd always ask me about my childhood, and I'd have like these. I try to remember like specific days or specific things that would happen, and I couldn't. I don't know if you're the same way, but I couldn't remember like a week. I can't remember like a full week from my childhood. It's like it's all these like little moments that make up your childhood.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, so that's kind of like what I did with this is I sat down and just kind of came up with stuff, and I thought there were some really unique stories that are specific really to me and like my upbringing in Pennsylvania, like the farmlands of Pennsylvania. And I thought they would make some good, interesting stories, if not just like reflections on like nostalgic things, you know? So
Yeah, the
that's
change into the modern world, how things have been, and that sort of thing.
exactly.
It did end up, yeah, it did end up making rainy day. It did end up becoming rainy days, and shoot, I can't believe I forget what the your new game project is.
Oh yes, I'm working on. Oh, my new game is called Bubbo. Is my new game Bubbo Escape actually,
Yeah.
and then I'm working on another one on the side too called Hopperton Frog, which is like more like funny, silly platformer.
Ah, yeah.
I'm working on a couple of games right now.
Hopefully they'll be out by. No, I don't know if they'll be out. Uh,
I'm trying to
development.
get Bubbo done by the end of next month. That's the plan. I'm
Okay.
getting close. It's a small game, but it still takes so long.
Yeah, game development is a whole other beast. I'm kind of surprised that it still astounds me that you know you're still able to have enough time and project to do these other projects on top of animation. Uh, well, I mean, you haven't mentioned how in different studios have different methods, and so they have different workloads. But how
Yeah,
do you balance
I
it?
well, in animation, when you're a storyboard artist, I mean, so there's different positions in animation, and as a storyboard artist is like, in my opinion, like the heaviest, like the most physically demanding position in animation, and it's because you draw and draw and draw and draw. Like you just don't stop drawing, and it's like you work on a board for 6 weeks, and then you turn around next week, you start the next one, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of like physical work, you know. But get once you kind of, if you want to, you can become a director or storyboard supervisor, and then a director. You draw less and you supervise more, which means that you like make notes, you supervise other storyboard artists, um, and then so the natural progression is like you start as a storyboard artist, and then supervising director, supervising producer, and then an executive producer, and that's what I am now. So basically, I don't draw as much as a storyboard artist, so I do have energy after hours to draw, unlike they do, and that it basically comes down to that. Like, uh, and also like I set time aside. Like I love working on my own projects, and um, sometimes they lead to pilots or development work or a series or whatever. But right now, during the pandemic, like since I didn't have to commute and there was just more time being at home, I just picked up like game development. It was that's been my new fun thing to do. It's not like I'll never go back to comics, but I've just been concentrating on that right now.
No, yeah. I mean, shoot.
I don't know if that answers the question. But...
Oh no, no, yeah, yeah. That's more than fine. Uh, I do know that, especially in this pandemic, there's a lot of people who have nothing but time now. But I
Yeah,
to bring it back to dumb though. So what I we did you did mention how everyone kind of had their slots, and I think that's just an ingenious idea, and I'm surprised that there's not, because there are some comics that will network and kind of group together to kind of share it. Like Channel 8 is also kind of networked in with Edmund Finney and a few other web comics that I do not read as much. But they all have their own separate sites, but having just one site where everyone can just where you have different artists who come in who cover one day of each week is it's a great consumer idea, and I'm surprised that not a lot of people have done it, because it allows for people to it kind of feeds that repetitive addiction of come back one day even if you don't even like the comic that's there, you can come in tomorrow and there's a new one that you can like, and then next day and next day and next day. And was it just how did you come up with that, or was it just a planned thing?
It was planned from the very beginning because um, I that's the site that I wanted. Like I wanted to go to a site and there's new comics every day, and there wasn't anything like that where there was like variety. You know, it was just always the same comic, and barely even then they would have it every day. You know.
Yeah.
Um,
The only
I mean,
one that's ever done like every day is probably Cyanide and Happiness, and that's run by 4 different guys. So.
yeah, and well, Penny Arcade too, right? Like they
Oh
do.
yeah.
Do they do it daily?
I
Yeah.
thought they do like 3 a week or something, but who knows?
I mean, it goes back to like old comic strips. I mean, like any newspaper comic they would run, they would do 6 comics a week. And it was like one artist would do 6 comics a week, and
Yeah.
and I knew that we couldn't do that
Yeah.
because I couldn't do like I mean maybe I could do it. I don't. Wouldn't look very good, but
Especially with an intensive day job like that. Like I don't
yeah,
know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that was it was almost born out of necessity because it's like okay, if we get 5 people together, we could have a comic up every day, and it was weird because when we launched, it launched with like I don't know a week's worth of stuff. I think we started with a week backlog, and it's like there's not much to look at, and now it's weird because there's like so much stuff up there, and it's this huge thing, but it started off with just nothing basically.
I will say though, it has definitely like downgraded. It's half dead, is what I'd say. It's like there's a
Oh yeah,
lot
definitely.
of.
I mean, I am totally not even involved with it anymore. Like, I basically just keep up with the paying for the space and the URL every year, and that's about it. Like
Hey, I appreciate that. We need to friggin' keep this stuff alive. There are so many friggin' webcomics where it's like, oh, I love this comic. Oh, I need to check and see if they're out. Oh, the thing's dead. Oh, shoot.
plus the
Well,
site is just like so old fashioned too. Like just the way it's set up and everything is very old fashioned.
yeah, it's still used in Comic Press, which I tried to use WordPress, and Comic Press isn't even a plugin, or they have to update that.
Yeah, it doesn't even work anymore.
I so I figure that there's one subject that I do want to touch on, and it's part of why I wanted to do Dummcember, especially since we are now a year into doing these shows. I feel like the boys are finally in a good place. They're able to read web comics and appreciate Dumb. Some of them appreciate Dumb. Some of it's not really to their taste, but um, I really wanted to do this because we gotta talk about Ricky.
Yeah.
I just want to know because when that came out, I was an avid reader, and when it happened, it just hit like a brick the reality of the situation. And I just want to know how involved was he in the site, and who was he? Who is Ricky Garduno?
Well, I met Ricky, like I said, in '96, and we were going to this school in Santa Monica called Bridges. It was a really crappy animation school. Um, uh, it's not around anymore, but basically, I thought he was a genius because I thought he was like hilarious. And I had my sights set on going into Spumco and work in animation professionally. And Ricky did too, but he was like definitely didn't have the same like draftsmanship, and he just didn't. He was more of a creative, like a write. He was more like a writer's artist. You know what I mean? And I'm more like an artist, and it's hard. It was hard for him to like land a job in animation because he wanted to pitch his own stuff, and it's tough if you don't work in animation and try to land your own show because you are you don't you
You don't
just don't
have a
have the
foothold.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have when they see you, they don't see all your experience. They just see like this idea, and it's like, well, that's not enough. Like they basically want the person and their experience and who they are and definitely if they've been in animation a while and they have the if they've worked in multiple positions, they can, it's easier. It's basically easier to sell something,
Yeah, you got to
So
lay the groundwork and work your way up in order to kind of
yeah,
establish
exactly.
yourself. Yeah.
So I got Ricky um, involved as much as I could at every step that I could in animation. I tried to get him into Spumco, and then after Spumco, we were working on. I went in. I worked at Saban for a little while, uh, and he was doing his own thing too. Like he was basically working at odd jobs and working on pitches and working on like side projects and stuff. And then finally, it was his first animation gig, like real full time animation gig, was Mucha Lucha. I think it was season 2. I think he started on season 2, and he just exploded because he's awesome. Like he it was they were pitch boards, which means that you got an outline. You just got like just a very basic like what happens in the cartoon, and then you write the whole rest of the cartoon. You can change all the jokes. You can basically it's like basically like you're doing a comic, but and you're writing the show.
Yeah.
So Ricky like exploded in that situation, and it was great. And once he was in, then we started pitching a bunch of stuff together. We pitched and did a pilot together at Disney. We pitched called Catch One Up, which was cool. And
Nice.
then we I tried to get him. I did a pilot for Big Pants Mouse at Disney, and I got
That's
him
Big
in
Short's
to be
mouse, right?
exactly, yeah, and I got him in to be the writer, and that didn't go anywhere. And then I pitched, and then I got him. Well, he under his own accord. I can't say I'm doing all this for him. He's like
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah.
and at that point, like I hired him onto Buzz on Maggie, and then El Tigre, and in between there, we pitched another project at Disney that didn't go anywhere, called Cube School. Like basically, we put together 3 pitches, pitched them everywhere, and there was only a couple that stuck. And one was Catch One Up, and the other one was called Pink Soda, which we renamed to um, Cube School, and then when we were at when we were on working on El Tigre, we started Dumm Comics, and I pitched Mode 5 at Cartoon Network, and I did a pilot, and it was around the same time that Flapjack was in development, and it was picked up to do like basically what happens is like you do the pilot, it gets tested, and then if it tests really well, then you go to series. But there's like sometimes there's like an interim step in there where you get hired to do more boards, so just in case the show does get picked up, you already have a couple storyboards done. So during that time, we were doing Dumb, and the first I hired Katie and Luke to do one board, and I hired Sean to do another board, and I hired Ricky to supervise the storyboards. So it would have been an amazing show. It would have been like the whole Dumb like on one show, and it was all set up to like for Ricky to write and supervise, and it would have been amazing. But that didn't go. And then Ricky moved on to being more
I think he
independent at
did.
that point.
Oh, what?
Yeah. So he started doing. He was more independent, so he went on to do Makeys, I think, or whatever they called it, the Tony Millionaire cartoon.
Yeah.
He worked on that, and then he went to Family Guy.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the last things he did. In the meantime, he was still doing pilots, and he was pitching and just being active the whole time, And there was a point where he's like, I'm going to give up animation, because for him, animation was always like working on other people's stuff, giving away himself for those projects. And I always saw it as if like I can enjoy my day job, but it's a day job. Like, like I'm working on El Tigre, it's not my show, but I'm going to put everything I can into the show and still have a chance to work on my own stuff afterwards. I always saw that as a balance. Ricky always saw it as like, I'm whoring myself out to these big corporations. I only want to do my stuff, which is fine, you know. But he really took it to that extreme. So there was a point when he like quit all his animation work to work on 1920, and it was like, you know, he quickly learned that like no, you still need to keep a day job. So yeah, and
Yeah.
then yeah, so that's basically Ricky's story. Like he's amazing, and I love him, and it just sucked. Like it was like at the end, it just sucked.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, but it's understandable because especially as an independent artist, we want to be known for ourselves, and especially for animation. Like you've mentioned how in Animaniacs, it's a huge crew. You got a bunch of storyboard artists and a bunch of the people who are even below that doing the colors and things like that, and it's easy to see yourself as just a cog in the gears instead of a piece of the whole.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think LT Gray might have had a crew of maybe 50 people, but you know, Animaniacs is over 100.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, same as Kung Fu Panda was another big show that was around 90. So it's like you are like your own little department, and people come and go, and they move from show to show. And I just wish more artists would do their own stuff on the side. I think they are now. When I was coming up, there wasn't as many people doing it, but I
Yeah.
think there are more people now doing it, which is great because I think like they see other artists doing it, and they're like, this is especially storyboard artists. Like I know that it's a lot of work, but they should try to do their own stuff on the side too. You know,
Yeah. And I
because
mean, yeah.
it can only lead to good things. Like for me, it led to like 2 pilots and a development deal. For Ricky, it led to like tons of things. I mean, every single person, even Katie, when she was working on Kung Fu Panda with me. She's like, I have an idea for a comic, and she
She ended
entered
up getting a
that.
pilot too, didn't she?
Oh yeah, yeah. But before that, she was working on Kung Fu Panda. And she entered that Penny Arcade reality show, comic reality show thing, and she won. And she quit animation for 2 years to do Camp We Don't Want You, you know,
Nice.
and then she came, and then when they were living up north, like her and her now husband Adam, they're living in Oregon, and I was in development at Nickelodeon, and I kept, Katie's like one of my close friends too, and I asked her if she was ever interested in doing Camp We Don't Want You as a pilot, and she said, "Well, yeah, we're interested in that." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So immediately, development executives at Nickelodeon were like, "We want to do it as a pilot." So I got to help on that pilot as well, and I also tried to convince Brienne to start doing RPG because she was, it was like Katie and I were like really, we were big fans of Brienne,
Oh yeah.
and we're like, you got to do a comic, because she would do like little comics or children's books and stuff, and she's just super fast and super prolific, but she wasn't doing a comic, and we convinced her to start, and then when she started, she's awesome. Like of course it exploded, and then that also led into a pilot at Nickelodeon too, which I also got to help on. So it was great. It would have been cool if both those went through, because it would have been amazing to have like two Dumb alums going at the same time. I mean, they were literally in development at the same time. Both shows could have gotten picked up at the same time. It would have been really amazing.
Oh man, that would have been something. Although thankfully, RPG is still going on, and it's a wonderful webcomic. I definitely
Oh yeah,
recommend
she's
other
great.
people to go and read it.
Yeah, Brienne's just like amazing, and it's like definitely her. Like her comic is definitely her. It's like all her tastes and the things she loves, and she just can draw so well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can't recommend it enough. I think it's great. She's great. She's a sweetheart.
I do want to touch a bit on the after era of like when the original cast kind of started dropping off, like Earthward Ho, of course, Earthward Ho, and then Through the Porthole ended, and then Big Man's Mouse ended, and then of course 1920s, but then you started getting kind of a revolving cast, and how did that come about? Was it because it didn't seem to be from the same pool? Some of the people did seem a bit closer, but it seemed to kind of like a weird hodgepodge because you had you'd have, of course, you'd have Rad Raz, Strawberry Raccoon, and
Yep.
that Wicked. Oh, of course, Wicked Wickle, which was Luke's thing after or in the middle of Skadai. But
Yeah.
how did you get those other artists to come in?
Well, we tried to, when someone would leave, we try to get that person to find a replacement. So basically, if like, let's say Fred left, he would try to find someone to replace his slot, And I think, wasn't it MechLab that replaced Fred? I
Yeah,
think,
for a small bit, I believe. Yeah.
yeah, I think Aaron replaced Aaron Horvath, who's freaking awesome too. He's Teen Titans Go. He's one of the creators of Teen Titans Go. Yeah, he came in and did that, and then basically it literally was that. It was like Luke got done with his comic, and we met Isa at a convention, and thought, Isa was great, so asked if they wanted to do, what was it, injured? What was Isa's comic?
I can't remember. What was it about? Sorry.
Internally Injured Ninja. That's what it was.
Oh,
so Isa came in, and then when Isa left, we tried to find someone else. So it's basically that's what it was. It was like that's why like Skady lasted so long. There wasn't anyone to replace Skady for a while.
That's how you pronounce it. Son of a bitch! I was wrong.
Well, she wrote in the comic it's Scotty. That's how you're supposed to pronounce it. But she says Skady, and that's what she says. So that's what I have always said,
I've pronounced it neither of those ways. I've always pronounced it Skadai. I'm like, I don't know. Vikings, it has die in the word. I don't know.
Well, the tricky part with Dumm was that we always needed something every day, right?
Yeah.
And this is the problem. Like, artists want to spend more time and get better and make stuff better, and it's like there's a lot
it's
of
hard when you
artists-
have a timeline. Or do you have that?
Yeah, I mean, but these are basic deadlines. Like, these are deadlines that, like, when Ricky and I started, we started and we went crazy. Like, we had like we were like 2 months ahead, and our whole demand was like we want to have 2 months ahead for everybody, or at least a month ahead. That's 4 comics in the bank, and once you start falling behind, it's a red flag, and you have to catch up. And if you don't catch up, then we started putting penalties in place, and that's where Rumpus McSnivel came from. Basically, if someone didn't meet their deadline, like Ricky and I came up with Rumpus McSnivel, and I would draw them, and Ricky would write them, or we would write them together. And we just wanted it to be like this crass, gross thing that no one wanted on their day. Like it was almost like a punishment. Like if you don't get your stuff in, there's gonna be a rumpus there, And that's where that came from. And that's basically where all the problems happened with Dumm. Was like Ricky would like to upload the night before, and sometimes the site, he would miss the deadline, and then the site would break because he wanted to put everything he could into that one comic, and it's like, dude, just put it up and worry about, he would switch it out the last minute. He changed jokes because he thought we were looking at his jokes, and it's like, dude, like I'm working on my comic, like I'm not looking at yours,
Yeah.
And so that's where all the problems started happening with Dumm, was like this deadline, and it's like that's where it quickly went south. You know what I mean? Like we're all still friends, but it was like, man, if
Especially
if I would have done Dumm again, I would pick like artists that I knew that, okay, you're signed on for like a year, you have to do this many comics, like, you know what I mean? Like almost like a contract or something, because it was like super, like just a bunch of friends getting together doing it, and then it quickly turned into like, you're not pulling your weight, man. Like, why aren't you getting your stuff in on time? Or like, this is a filler comic, this totally sucks,
Yeah.
And we'd have meetups like every month and talk about stuff, and it was always like, where's your stuff? And it's like, like we all agreed on having this much ahead of time, like this is agreement, now you guys are flaking. It was always those problems. That's what was happening behind the
Yeah.
the backdrop of Dumb,
Yeah,
and
I mean, I think in the last episode that we recorded, we were going through I think the big rough patch of Scotty where there was a lot of missed updates and Katie was working on the book, and so we were getting like re-uploads with with
yeah.
roughs and stuff. But I do want to mention though, because yeah, it does seem I do remember, like, as a consumer, Ricky did seem to be kind of the guy that would always come in because whenever one dropped out, in the meantime, while we were waiting for another artist or someone to fill that slot, there would be just another 1920s.
Oh yeah, Ricky, like there's a time period where Ricky's like, I'm not going to work on anything. I'm only going to work on 1920, and so we just made 3 days a week him. It was like
Yeah.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday was 1920, and I think at one point, and I think I was in there, and maybe Skady was in there, and that was it. Like that was all that was airing, And but Ricky wasn't a businessman, so he never had like a real plan. He was like, well, this will take off, and I can make money on it. And it's like that's not how it works. You gotta like you should set up your own site. You know what I mean? Like there's a bunch of things you could do, and like we never made money on Dumb ever. Like we paid for the site itself, and that was it. Like that's basically all the money that was made. And,
It wasn't riddled with ads as it is now, but
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I mean, and it's hard to like make any money. Period. I mean, not that it was like a real business to begin with. Anyway, it was more like I don't know. We kind of set up as like
just a group project.
Comics. Yeah, a group project basically. Yeah,
and
it's still like that's kind of how it ended up.
Although I do think, because you did mention the troubles with Dumb, that is always one problem that I think a lot of people will run into, especially if you're an aspiring artist or something. Because I've noticed, like, there's some like really good fan comics and independent stuff that people will make, and it's great. But then life happens, and they need to have a day job. Not everyone can just get rid of everything and just go all in. It doesn't. Sometimes you lose that bet, and so what a lot of people will end up doing is like being like, okay, is there someone who's willing to be like a digital guy to do the inks and stuff for me? And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. And like, okay, sweet, works for 1 week, and then it problems. The one thing that I've always found is that whenever you have the more cogs in a machine that you have, the more chances for something to go awry, because you're relying on more parts, and so there there's more. If one thing doesn't work, then it kind of throws the whole thing out of whack. And if you don't have that chemistry, it just won't work. And I will say though, like, God, how long was Dumb? Like, it gave it a good 9 years, 10 years.
Something like that. Yeah. Like yeah, the last right here I'm looking at it right now. It says the last comic was like May of 2018, and we started in like May of '08, I think.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I think it's like almost exactly 10 years.
it was definitely a good run.
I mean, the whole idea too was like I wanted, like, with animation, it's very collaborative. Everything's very collaborative, and I thought doing like a site this way would be a good way to like artists aren't artists. Some artists, well, most artists, they don't like deadlines. Period.
Yeah.
And I thought this would be a good way to go like, okay, we're all in this together. We're all depending on each other. This is a good motivation. You know what I mean? To get my stuff in. I don't want to let my friends down.
Yeah.
And that's basically where it came from. Like to do it. I didn't want to go alone. I knew that there were amazing people that needed to have a voice and make some cool comics. And I was like, this is perfect. This is the perfect thing.
Yeah. It's just Shame that it had to end. But hey, at least we got Swefts. I will say Swefts is fucking nice. I didn't think
Yeah, I
I'd
mean,
like it as
there's
much
a
as I
lot of good
did.
stuff that came out of it. Like, just I'm proud of what happened with Dumb. I mean, I wish it would have been. I mean, I didn't want to keep doing it because I don't want that to be like a whole project, like a whole side project. I want to do my own projects, you know.
Yeah, of
But
course.
I'd love for someone to like start something like that again. I'd be a contributor, but I wouldn't want to run the whole thing again.
Yeah,
You know?
never again. No.
Yeah, I mean, I did comics last year during the pandemic too, while I was doing my comic or doing the game, and I miss it. I miss doing comics. They're fun.
Yeah.
I didn't post them on Dumb, but I posted on my Instagram.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that'll be enough for now. I don't know. Speaking of Instagram though, where can the good people find you?
Um, I'm at Gabe Swarr on Instagram. Also, Gabe Swarr on Twitter.
With two
Um,
R's.
yes, Swarr. And yeah, I mean, you can find anything I'm working on now. Right now, I have a Patreon going for game development and comics and that kind of stuff. So that's exclusive. Like I'll do like little articles and stuff and put them up, and also you can play the demo of my latest games and stuff before it's released. But it's been a lot of fun doing games. It's like I've always wanted to do them, and it's cool to learn how to do them now.
Oh yeah. And there's a lot of really neat tutorials on how you can do them yourself, and also there's a bit more of I think you've done a few comic tutorials as well.
Yeah, I did a couple on YouTube. I don't know if they're still up. I think. Yeah, I think they're still up.
They weren't copyright struck, as far as I know.
I don't think so. I did use music that I wasn't supposed to. I think I don't remember honestly. I'd have to look. Yeah, and then on YouTube too, like all my Life in the Analog Age comics are up there, or cartoons are up there, and you know, Life in the Analog Age isn't dead either. Like I still have some stuff written. I have some stuff in progress, but I'm not actively working on it right now.
Yeah, just whenever. Fair enough. Till then, this has been Let's Talk. I have been your host, Lieutenant Amazil. Time to say goodbye. Say goodbye, Gabe. Goodbye,
Bye, thanks.
everyone. Bye. See you next time. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was great.